10. AA has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Tonight our main speaker is Mike. Please help me welcome Mike to the stage.
I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 23rd, 1985. For that, I'm grateful. And it's good to be here. Thanks, Kirk, for inviting me. And welcome all of those who are here in their first 30 days. I had to stand up to be in my first 30 days for 10 years. And I'd sit in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and I'd see people get sober. And I'd sit there and think, man, I stopped drinking and I want to kill myself. So I'd sit in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous thinking about the ways I could kill myself. And I did that from age 15 to age 25. And I can tell you it's not a great way to live. I can tell you that I was in and out of psychiatric hospitals, detox centers. People tried to help me. People in AA tried to help me. Some people in AA tried to help those people that I was trying to put the touch on while I was coming to meetings. And I had to go through what I had to go through to get to the point that I had enough willingness to take action. Well, I'm talking about taking action. I'll give you a story. Last night I was in Scottsdale on a business meeting. I was getting ready to come home here. I'm living in Prescott. And I stopped for gas. And we finished getting gas, and I look, and there's a dude standing on the corner with a sign. You're looking to get some money. And I went over and I said, hey, man, come here. And he walks over to me and I said, what's your story? And he started sharing some things with me. I said, no. What's your story? Why are you standing here holding a sign? We talked for a little bit, and I could tell that his mental capacity was probably a little more advanced than me. So I said, how long are you sober? And he said, I'm sober a month and a half. I said, congratulations. We talked a little bit more, and tells me he's 52 years old. He's been fighting this alcohol and addiction thing for a long time with no success. And I looked at him and I said, the only difference between you and me is over the last 33 years, I've taken different actions. That's it. I've just taken different actions. And it's not because I'm smarter or had better opportunities. It's I had people in my life that were introduced to me in Alcoholics Anonymous, in meetings like this, all over the place, that have given me some good orderly direction, some guidance, and some encouragement. And I've had the willingness to take those actions. And as a result of the actions that I've taken, I've gotten the results that they promised to me that I would get. And I think my message tonight is really a message of action. Because all the years I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, nothing happened until I began to take a lot of the right actions. And I didn't even know they were the actions that I was supposed to take, and I rebelled against most of them because I didn't want to do them. Some of you guys are living in sober livings and treatment, and some of you here are forced by the court or your family or whatever the situation is, and I don't know, and I don't really care. The reality is If you're alcoholic like I'm alcoholic, and you're sober today, and you're willing to take some action, you're going to get the results. It's that simple. I've never gotten a result without taking some action. Most of you know our promises. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. I mean, pretty much everybody's heard that, right? Think about the way he wrote that. Bill wrote that in 1938. He was sober a couple of years. He got sober in 1934. He's writing this book, and he gets to this point when he wants to talk about what happens as a result of taking the actions that are outlined in the book. And he says, if we're painstaking, which implies there's some effort, he says we'll be amazed. He doesn't say we'll be moderately satisfied when we get to this point, okay? We'll be amazed before we're halfway through. I don't know about you, but I want to be amazed. I want to live a life that's amazing. I want to participate in amazing things. So we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. I don't know what that is for you. I know for me, the first freedom that I had was I was able to keep a meal down. I'm serious. That was the deal, man. Every time I ate, I went to the bathroom and threw up. Every morning I got up. I lived with my sponsor. He was 80 years old. Had a one-bedroom apartment. He let me stay in the bedroom. He slept on the couch. He got sober in October 1951. His grand sponsor was Bill W. So I had some people in my life that could give me some great experience. And I began to take the action that these men outlined for me that were all in the book. So a new freedom and a new happiness. It says things in that like, we'll comprehend the word serenity and we'll know peace. We'll see how our experience can benefit others. Feelings of uselessness and self-pity will slip away. I mean, for an alcoholic like me, that's incredible stuff. If I can live a day and see how my experience can benefit someone else. I'm a guy that was a taker. All I wanted was what I could get, and I didn't want to work for it, and I didn't want to pay for it. So I took it. And that was how I lived my life. And even in AA, I was one of these guys that would cheer up this whole room by leaving. Like somebody licked all the red off my candy, okay? Like I was miserable when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because I thought I was a victim. Even though I knew AA worked because I grew up in an AA home. My dad got sober in the early 60s. His sponsor got sober in 1941. I had AA success all around me. But for me, I thought I was different. Because I thought Alcoholics Anonymous was, you stop drinking, you go to meetings, you hug each other, you say the right things, and you're happy. I'd go to AA. I'd try to hug. And I was miserable because I wouldn't take the action. And it wasn't as though people didn't tell me that there were steps outlined in the book or that I should have a sponsor. I mean, I'm sure I heard that kind of stuff. But what I really heard was you don't drink and you go to meetings, and as a result of that, your life gets miraculous. And I would see people celebrate different milestones in recovery. 30 days, 60 days, a year, they'd have a parade and a cake and a plaque and all kinds of stuff. And I'd sit there and just want to kill myself because I couldn't be part of that. I couldn't connect with it because now I know, all these years later, I can look back and I can see why. And the reason why is because I wasn't taking the action. It wasn't because I didn't intellectually understand. I did. I wasn't willing to take the action. Because that's where it is for me. And that's where it's always been for me. It's in the action. So a number of years ago, I was having a challenge, we'll just say it was well, I woke up one morning and I had a concern. Okay? How many of you have woken up with a concern? Okay? It's almost like your head will wake you up and tell you got a concern, okay? So now I got this concern, and I think about it, and it became a problem. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed was I thought about it. And it went from a concern to a problem. Well, I kept thinking about it. It went from a problem to a crisis. I kept thinking about my new crisis, and I became paralyzed. Only thing that changed was I thought about it. You were just talking about that. You're just talking about those voices. I thought about nothing changed, but yet my thinking went from a concern to an immobilizing crisis in about 2 minutes. So I dragged my butt out of bed and did what I've been taught to do, and I went and had breakfast with my sponsor. And I shared with him my crisis. And he looked at me and he said, "Your life is in divine order, unfolding into goodness." Clearly, he did not understand what I was saying. So I gave it to him again. Being a salesman, I kind of regrouped what I had to say, and I spit it back out. And this time he looks at me and he says, "Your life is in divine order, unfolding into goodness." Now I'm seriously looking to see if he's got his hearing aid in. Because I'm looking for wisdom. I'm looking for the answer. I'm looking for some direction. And this guy's telling me my life is in divine order, unfolding into goodness. And then he could see how much I was struggling with that. And he said, if you go back through your life, as far back as you can go, and you look at all the circumstances and events that have occurred up until this moment in time, and you're honest about it, you'll see how God has pulled a golden thread through each and every one of those circumstances and events that have led you to this moment. Well, in step 11, in the 12 and 12, he says, self-examination, prayer, and meditation are our principal means of contact with God. And when these three things are logically interwoven, they create an unshakable foundation for life. Okay? When I was trying to get sober, the last thing I was thinking about was an unshakable foundation for life. What I was looking for was a job, a place to live, and a girlfriend. And I would have taken a girl that had a job and a place to live and been happy. Okay? That's what I was looking for. Unshakable foundation, couldn't comprehend it. Okay? Could not comprehend that. So what I've learned when Howard said this to me, that if I looked back through my life at all the circumstances and events, I could see a golden thread. I began to do this self-examination, this prayer and meditation, and look at my experience over the number of years that I had been alive to that point, and I could see things, how my life had incrementally gotten better in sobriety, how things had changed, and how little I actually had to do with it. And by looking at the evidence of my own experience, I could trust that things were going to continue to be okay. So what happened for me was just that. My problems, my crisis, the things that were troubling me went away. And the reason they went away is because I knew I didn't need to be afraid. And I didn't need to be afraid because I could trust that my life was in divine order, that it was unfolding into goodness. And if I questioned that, I could look at the evidence of my own experience and I could see, I'm here and this is what's happening. I think that's what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous does for us. It takes us through a series of steps where we begin to take certain actions. And as we take these actions, we clean up our past, we develop relationships, we see how we can be useful, we begin to become productive, and we celebrate what we get to live. It's the holidays. At the holidays, you go to AA meetings, and people say, well, anybody got a topic? Yeah, gratitude. Let's talk about gratitude. I don't want to talk about gratitude. Okay? The reason I don't want to talk about gratitude is, I'll tell you what I told that dude last night. Okay? I gave him a few dollars to get him through. I mean, it's kind of cold out. And, gave him my phone number and said, if you call me, I'll try to help him, and I will. And, but here's what I said. I said, well, don't you think that if you put that sign down and you walked over here to this gas station and you saw somebody getting out to pump their gas and you said, excuse me, I don't want to bother you, but I've been asked to do something nice for someone today. Would it be all right if I pumped your gas? And I'll tell you something. If you take that action, even if they don't give you any money because you're not asking for it, you're going to feel better. See, Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me to give of myself to the service of others without expectation. It's a tough thing for an alcoholic to do because most alcoholics spend so much time thinking about themselves, they don't have time to think about someone else. When I sponsor a new guy, a lot of times initially what I ask them to do is to go buy 30 thank you cards and write a thank you card every day and send it to someone who's been good to them. Just a handwritten note. Hey, Bob, thanks for being in my life. You were the best teacher I ever had. Just want you to know I care about you and thank you for participating in my life. I love you. Bye. I'll challenge you. If you do that every day for 30 days, you're going to change. Because it's the actions that we take. And the other benefit to that, if you really want to do it right, you actually go every day to the drugstore or the pharmacy and you get a card, and then you go home and you do that. Because it'll occupy about 2 hours of your time, and during that 2 hours, you're spending that 2 hours of your time thinking about someone else. It's amazing what happens when an alcoholic starts thinking about someone else. They're not nearly as sensitive, okay? Not nearly as hopeless. Because what happens when we do something for someone else is we feel good. We feel great. That's why this service in Alcoholics Anonymous is so important. If you're new and you don't have a service position, I'm going to give you the opportunity to volunteer for a service position. You right now are elected to be the door greeter at the next 10 meetings you go to. Get there 15 minutes early, shake everybody's hand that comes in, and tell them that you are grateful that they're there. Because they may be the next one to save your life. But if you'll connect and take those actions, you're going to get results that are going to be life-changing. And I mean that. It's amazing. You'll be amazed before you're halfway through. You're going to comprehend the word serenity, and you're going to know peace. You're going to see how your experience can benefit others. Feelings of uselessness and self-pity, they'll go away. Because what happens is you begin to control what's going to happen in your life. We've got a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. The beginning of that book is a doctor's opinion. And at the back of that book are experiences of sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous that are sharing their stories with you and I. And they're giving us what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today, just like I'm doing tonight. Okay? I don't need to tell you that when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I weighed 90 pounds and everything I owned was in a cardboard box. Okay, that's my experience. Your experience, however, wherever alcohol and drugs brought you to that point where you reached out for help, where you surrendered and you said, I need help, let that be that incomprehensible demoralization that they talk about in the book. It doesn't have to be my story. Remember getting locked up in a psychiatric ward? This is how I was. And the girls doing the intake, okay? They always have good-looking girls doing intakes, you know? I mean, they just do, you know? And she's just a couple years older than me, and as she's asking me these questions, I'm trying to tell her a life with me would be a good move. And But that was where I was at, okay? So, I got sober in Texas, and I really was really blessed to have some wonderful people in my life. No more wonderful than the man sitting next to you. No more wonderful than the woman sitting next to you right now, okay? And that's the truth. The truth is, if I look back, I can see that golden thread in my life. It's in your life too. And before we get sober, that's a corrosive thread, okay? But when we get sober, it can begin to change. And my sobriety has been incremental. It's gotten better and better. Finally, I went down to live with John for 2 weeks, and I stayed for 2 years, okay? And this guy, he was 80 years old, and he had a one-bedroom apartment. He gave me the bedroom, dragged me all over the place. And I think today about inconveniencing myself. So there's some times that I have to inconvenience myself to be of service to someone. And I think about the guys that inconvenience themselves for me. So I didn't have a sense of gratitude and appreciation when he invited me to come live in his home. I used to sit up at night and argue with him. I did that, Mr. AA. Wow, who cares? Okay? I hope you choke on that cigar and die. I think back now, he would smile. He'd say, "Kid, you're doing all right. Kid, you're doing all right." He said, "You got to get out of that debating society." And then I'd spend the next 20 minutes trying to debate with him whether or not I was in the debating society. You know what the heck he's talking about. He says, "Kid, you keep talking about those people you want to get even with back in Buffalo, that they caused this and that." He says, "Why don't you try to get even with the people that have been good to you?" Well, that's what I've been doing for the last 33 years. Trying to get even with the people that have been good to me, one day at a time. But trying to give away what's been freely given to me. It's that simple. Now, they say, "Oh, it's a simple program for complicated people." No, it's a simple program for simple people. Okay? We aren't that complicated. Don't go pat yourself on the back and start telling yourself you're complicated. Okay? You're not. You're just a garden variety drug addict alcoholic. And if you take actions, you're going to stay sober. He said, "Kid, we can show you how to get up, stand up, and stay up." Wow, nobody ever told me that. Well, I'm laying on the floor in a bar. Told me that in Alcoholics Anonymous. They told me things in Alcoholics Anonymous like, "You know what, kid, you're an alcoholic. And guess what? You're going to live the rest of your life with alcoholics." Got it? They're either going to be drunk or sober. And that choice is yours. That's what they said to me. They said, "Here are the steps we took. You better took them." Texas, they talk a little funny. So I go through this thing, and John and I go through the steps, and I'm fighting all the way, okay? And it's okay. I mean, if you're fighting some of the stuff, that's okay. But I did it. I still did it, even though I didn't agree with it, even though I'd fight with it, even though I'm arguing with him. He'd say, "Come on, kid, I'm speaking at a conference in Canada." And I'd be driving him from Texas to Canada. We might go somewhere else, whatever. We were all over the place. And he would have, As Bill Sees It, Dr. Bob and the Gold Timers, the big book, and the 12 and 12. And he'd be reading to me, and then he'd be quizzing me. "What's Dr. Bob's address, kid?" It was AA School on Wheels. Okay? That was what I was introduced. I was thrown into this culture. Okay? And I began to do these things. And being sober actually began to be fun. It began to be a good time. When I got strong enough, because I was saying, hey, John, I think I should get a job. He said, no, you don't need a job. I said, oh, no, man, I need a job. I can be useful. No, you don't need a job. And then he would say, because if you got a job, you'd get a paycheck. And if you get a paycheck, then I'm going to have to come find you. Because that was the kind of alcoholic I was. So I listened. I had to learn to be patient. I had to learn to do things I didn't want to do, guys. Okay? I mean, some of you today were thinking about leaving whatever the situation you're in. You're thinking about, I'm getting the hell out of here. It's Christmas. I don't need to be here. I don't need to do this. This ain't working anyway. And I'm not happy. I want to tell you something. If you will take control and go through the process of doing the things you don't want to do, the day will come when you get to do the things you want to do. Really, truly, that's the way it works. Okay? So I was sober, 2 years. And it was time to leave Texas. And I wanted to come to Arizona. And I said, hey, I'm going to go to Arizona. And he's like, oh, good. I think that's a great choice. I think he had enough of me. And so I had some connections in Chandler. And I moved to Arizona. And I got a job as a laborer for a construction company in August carrying drywall. Okay? Some of you guys know that that's not an easy job in August in Arizona outside. Okay? So I wasn't completely sane, but I also wasn't employable. So I had to do that. I had to do what was in front of me. It was an opportunity. And an AA guy was letting me live in his apartment. And I'm out by the pool one day, and this girl dives in the water. Well, I dove in after her. And she's like, my name's Joy. I'm like, I need more joy in my life. 4 months later, we were married. And this December, just in a week and a half, it'll be 31 years. Okay? Now, I talked about God pulling a golden thread. Okay? I didn't know. I describe all my relationships prior to my marriage in one word: pathetic. Okay? That's simple, pathetic. You guys can put whatever you want with that, and it's going to describe what relationships were like for me. I was a user. I was a taker. I was a thief. I'd blame people. I was a victim. Nothing worked. Nothing. Uneducated, unemployable, broke, sick, way underweight, hopeless. My last hospital, went to Erie County Medical Center. And this was prearranged by the Council on Alcoholism. So I knew I was in. I got there. The admissions counselor came out and greeted me in the hall, put his hands up and said, you can't come here. You've been here too many times. We can't help you. And it was like the gates of hell slamming down. I did what any alcoholic would do. I went to a bar and got a drink. I'm looking out that window. The door was open. I'm looking out, and some lady's trying to get on the bus, and she falls down. And I go out, and I help her on the bus, and I get on after her. And you know what? I've never had to go back for the drink. That's one of the reasons I am so adamant about giving of ourselves without expectation of return. Because for the first time that I know of in my adult life, I did something for someone without expectation of any kind of reward for me. If that was an hour before, I probably would have kicked that lady, grabbed her purse, and ran my ass off. But that particular moment, I followed her onto the bus. And I really believe that the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous came to life for me at that moment. I really believe that something happened. We talk about it in AA, but a lot of times we don't understand what that is. And that is this profound spiritual experience or alteration. I didn't recognize it until I was sober over 20 years. Because it wasn't until I was going back through my life to see the golden thread that I saw that I did something that was completely uncharacteristic of me and my behavior by trying to help that lady. And as a result of it, I walked through an archway to freedom because of some action that I took, never knowing that I was having a spiritual experience. I wonder how many of you have had profound spiritual experiences and, like me, have missed them. I need to pay attention to the evidence of the experience in my life. So Joy and I started a family, had a couple kids because of what you do. I started a career. Things started getting relatively good in my life. I started getting asked to speak at AA meetings, professional respect, did some cool things, was asked to write some books. I wrote 4 books. I'm not a writer. I mean, just some really cool stuff, okay? This guy's from Alabama. Somebody's from Alabama I just met. Foster, right? All right. Birmingham. I got back from a business trip in Alabama, and I'm out cleaning the garage, and next thing you know, I'm laying on the floor in the hallway of my house in handcuffs while the Chandler Narcotics Department are raiding my house. Okay? And while I'm laying there on the floor in handcuffs, they're looking for my son, the thought comes to my mind. Your life is in divine order, unfolding into goodness. I actually thought that. The very next thought was, so is his. He'll be speaking here Saturday night, and he's got over 6 years sober. See, amazing things happen when we get out of the way and we take action. He was 17 at the time. He's 23 today. I'm not here to tell his story. You can come back Saturday and hear that. But he's 23. He owns his own home, just got married, has a 3-year-old, and has his own company. 23. Amazing. I mean, that's not like your life is going to get better. That's like, wow. That's my experience. I know it can be your experience. I know that. I'm not here as a motivational speaker to go rah, rah, rah. I'm here to tell you if you take the action, you're going to get the result. If you get the result and you share it with someone else, your life is going to expand and keep getting better. That's the way it is because it's unfolding constantly in divine order. You can't change that. I hope that I've said something that might help somebody tonight. I really sincerely mean that. I hope that you realize that it's not your sponsor. It's not me. It's not a speaker. It's not the big book. That's not it. It's the action that you take. My nephew spoke here recently. Called me up one day. I was living in Buffalo. This is over 5 years ago. Uncle Mike. Yeah? My life's a mess, man. I need some help. I said, well, what do you want to do about it? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I said, well, why don't you get on an airplane and come on out here? Spend 30 days with me. And at the end of 30 days, if you don't know what you want, you can get back on the airplane and go home. He came out. He's still here. Doing absolutely amazing. I am so proud of him. Okay? I don't sponsor these kids. I encourage them. They have to go get a sponsor. They got to take... My son, I tell you, for 6 months, man, that he would go to meetings as sponsor, and different people would pick him up. He'd come home from a meeting, and I'd say, how was the meeting? He'd say, I won't tell you exactly what he'd say, but he would say, basically, it sucked, and so do you. And then he would shut the room and shut his door and go in his room. Okay? And man, this went on. And then one night he's like, hey, Dad, you want to go to a meeting? And I'm like, no. And then I thought, you know what? I need to go to the meeting. And you see, It's incremental. He doesn't say that anymore. Yesterday he said, hey man, you want to go to a meeting with me? Was it yesterday? No, Monday. So we went to a noon meeting together here. But the thing is if you'll give yourself a chance, you'll get better. But it takes time. So here we are, the holidays are upon us. Some of you have everything that you want. Some of you feel like you'll never get anything that you want. Some of you have families left. Some of you don't. You know what? We're a family, guys. Okay? My sponsor told me years ago, love everything in your life as it is right now. Okay? I'm going to say that again. Love everything in your life as it is right now. And if you do, you will have more in your life to love. Because everything that you spend your time on expands. So spend your time on loving what you have and watch how it grows. Dr. Bob, one of the co-founders, in his last talk, said if you took Alcoholics Anonymous and you boiled it down to just two things, you'd have love and service. Okay? And we hear a lot of that around the fellowship, and that's great. And I agree with him. As a matter of fact, I think if Dr. Bob spent a little bit more time meditating on that, he could have said, if you simmered Alcoholics Anonymous down to just one thing, that one thing would be love. Because you see, service is love in action. A bell is not a bell till we ring it. A song's not a song until we sing it. Love wasn't put in our hearts to stay. Love is only love when we give it away. God bless you guys.